pleasure of introducing our next speaker here, who is a friend of mine and just an awesome change agent. Dr. Carrie Baker is a member of the Secretary of the Air Force Office of Diversity and Inclusion. She currently serves as the Director for Strategy, Policy, and Guidance for the department. As a member of the Secretary's team, she provides guidance on policies, practices, initiatives to strengthen the institutional diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility infrastructure across the department. She evaluates impact of the DEIA policies from a variety of sources and recommends policies and program changes to move beyond the traditional boundaries in talent management, truly to optimize diverse talent and promote an inclusive organizational culture across the enterprise for all our service members and their families. Today, Dr. Baker will be providing a talk or presentation on unconscious bias, how to recognize it, and the impacts to diplomacy and effective communication. Dr. Baker, over to you.
So, audience, first of all, I want to say it's a privilege and honor to spend some time with you this morning. I've been learning a lot, and I think I admire and appreciate everything you do, because in my observations, I do believe the protocol processes is in a form of soft power. So, quick question to the audience, and I could see the chat, so please feel free to type in your answer in the chat, because I can see everyone typing. Are there any left-handers, any left-hand protocol members? I see someone said yes. I just see one though. So I'm going to assume that we don't have a lot of left-handers. I see Mr. Perez says he's left-handed. Mr. Santos Rolando says he's left-handed. Okay, so it's safe to say the majority of the group is right-handed. So my question for the right-handers, have you ever had to request a special scissors to use to cut paper or any other items? For right-handers, have you ever had to request a special scissors? No. Okay. What about when you sit on a plane? Have you ever had challenges sitting on a plane? No. Okay. For my left-handers, can you type in the chat some of the challenges that you've had, unique experiences that you've had? Okay, bumping elbows at dinner. The scissor challenge. My handwriting, yes. So the bump, let's just go with that, just basic turn left instead of turn right. And my boss, so dinner, seating, scissors, exactly. So right-handers, to my right-hand family members, have you ever had those challenges that the left-handers are talking about? Like, is that an everyday part of your reality? Outside of having a family member that's left-handed? No, exactly, no. I see lots of no's. And that is what unconscious bias is. If you're not aware of a different perspective, a different experience, then you will be operating through your journey, not realizing that you're not, you may make decisions that impact others, not having that additional awareness of why it impacts others, if that makes any sense. So for the next few minutes, and this is going to be a short time I'm spending with you today, we can talk about this easily for a good 60 minutes plus, but we're going to just do an abbreviated Reader's Digest version on this. And the reason why I believe that unconscious bias is a good topic to have in your gathering this week is because as the nation's largest employer, we must model what it is to be inclusive. We always say that we treat everyone with dignity and respect, but it is really going to be a challenge to optimize inclusion. It's going to be a challenge to optimize what dignity and respect is if we are not inclusive and we do not value our diverse workforce. And oftentimes, just like we use the left hand versus the right hand, oftentimes we don't know how we're making an impact on leveraging our diverse talent and being inclusive if we're not aware. So next slide. So this is what we're going to cover in our time today. We're going to just level set unconscious bias. We're going to talk about the brain. And we're going to go over some mitigation strategies that, as a recommendation that you can consider. Next slide. Okay, so oftentimes we assume that our likes and dislikes are normal. But the truth of the matter is, that bias, the definition of bias is something that you either like or you dislike. And the reason why I said bias is something either that you're in favor of or favor not is because there's good biases and there's bad biases. I just want to put that out there. There's no such thing as it's only bad. Biases can be either good or bad. However, the unconscious part of bias is where we tend to have a habit of not realizing the second and third order effects. So to level set, it's a judgment that we as humans rely on to make snap decisions. Now, there's purpose in everything. There's purpose in the protocol processes that you employ in your jobs, very important jobs, whether it's working at a state level or doing a business meeting, whether it's digital diplomacy. There's purpose in the protocol processes that you all execute. Same thing, there is a purpose with unconscious bias. It serves as a protective mechanism to make sure that you as a human are safe. Therefore, it often operates beyond your control, beyond your awareness. And it truly does influence your decision making and even your behaviors, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, it influences your behaviors. All unconscious biases are shaped by your experience, by your socialization. So it's based on the environment that you were raised in, the culture that you were exposed to, and then your personal experiences as a human being. Bias is ever present, and guess what? You know how we always say one of the things that's guaranteed in life is paying taxes and dying? Well, let's add biases to the list. Pay taxes, dying, and having biases. We will go to our graves having biases because that's just a natural part of the human condition. It's nothing that you can get rid of. Next slide. So when I talked about the origin of biases stems from how you were raised, the cultural environments that you were exposed to, those are all facts. But the crux of biases, when it becomes on the negative side that has impact, is stereotypes, right? And the word stereotypes derives from the English language. It was a word that was created back in the 1800s, used by blacksmiths, just to give you a little bit of little known fact on the word. And the unique part of that word is whenever they would stamp something into the iron, it would stay. It wouldn't go away. And so that's how the word stereotype came up. And it actually, as it evolved into the 1900s, that's when the word stereotype became part of our lexicon. But it is the belief that most members of a group have the same characteristics. And so how are stereotypes developed? Through cultural, pop culture, movies, TVs, families, friends, historical data points. But the careful thing that we have to realize is that stereotypes also shapes our unconscious biases. And so we have to be careful, because as we navigate, right, our worlds, and we're doing our protocol jobs based on the exposure of different groups and experiences that we've had, sometimes those stereotypes can kick in and be a trigger and influence your decisions and your behaviors, even without your knowledge. That's what makes unconscious biases so impactful, right? Because it will have second and third order effects without you even recognizing it. So education and awareness is really critical. We often assume that, like I said, biases are normal, but the thing with the stereotypes is that we all have different worldviews and unique ways of navigating our environments, right? As Dr. Rashad Doher talked about time, the way different parts of the world treats time. I would love to go to Egypt, because it just sounds so exciting about how all day long, the day into the night, there's always something going on. But then Hungary, you go over there, they treat time completely different to the way Egypt treats time, right? So with the stereotype aspect of unconscious bias is that it's an unintended consequence, and it creates discriminatory actions potentially against one group while in favor of another group, and without even knowing. So let's go to the next slide. So all of this happens in the brain. As I mentioned, this is a human phenomena. It's part of the human experience. And so whether we like it or not, it's part of how we're wired. Now, I don't know if anyone's heard of the book Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast by Daniel Kahneman. But that book is a great book to read if you ever have the opportunity, whether to play it on audio or actually read it. But the author breaks down the science of how biases occur. So there's two sides of the brain, as we know. And in his explanation, he talks about system 1 and then system 2. System 1 is where all the information we gathered over the years is stored. And it's also the way we protect ourselves. So whenever we are in a strange environment, system 1 of the brain is going to kick in. And it's going to make sure that it gives us information that we could use. System 2 is the other side of the brain where it allows us to take our time and process information. It's reflective and it's considerate. That is the part of the brain where if there was to be an opportunity to give someone the benefit of the doubt, if there was an opportunity to just do more research on the information, System 2 would be that part of the brain. So what is recommended is that consciously try to be aware of what you're thinking when you're meeting someone for the first time or you're in a new place. Just be aware of that. Also, it would be interesting to see how your behaviors are. A good example of this is if you're in a meeting and it's mostly males and there's maybe one other female in that room. Our system 1 part of the brain would most likely gravitate towards the other female because it's familiar, it's comfortable. I'm not saying that will happen each and every time, but the general outcome would be you would end up, the brain will want to put you in protective mode. So the odds are high you would acknowledge the other female in the room and speak with the other female. So system 2 would then give you more time to assess who the other people are in the room and get to know them. So just understand that's how the biases work. System 1 is usually what happens when we're going into quick thoughts about a person, an environment, or a situation. Next slide. So how can you mitigate your biases? Now, like I said, we could talk on and on and on about these things, but I wanted to give you the Reader's Digest version of it, just to at least whet your palate to get you to start thinking at least a little bit more about you as a human. Like I said, that's one of the things that's just going to stay with us for life. So the first thing is to recognize and accept that you have biases. It is not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's a neutral thing. We all have it. And we know that it derives from our socialization. Now, then the next thing is to put a flashlight on yourself on what specifically are those biases. And that will require, of course, the system 2 side of the brain to kick in. But nevertheless, put a flashlight on it. It's okay. Then practice constructive uncertainty. That means do some critical thinking, ask yourself some questions about why those biases exist, the ones that we're talking about that have a negative impact. Then explore the awkwardness and discomfort as you process why the biases that you have may have a negative impact. Because in order for change to happen, there is going to be some discomfort. So don't run away from it. It will pass, but it's a necessary part of the transformational journey that you're on. And this is so critical because of the work you do. You want to be embracive and inclusive of everyone that you meet from all walks of life. And so this work is necessary, right, to be the best version of yourself in the protocol world. Then engage with people you consider to be different from you, but expose yourself to them as far as getting to know them and learn from them. Treat them as role models, as mentors from that group. Deliberately want to to be around people who are different from you, different backgrounds, different age groups, different cultural exposures. Let them be your trusted guide as you grow and really debunk some of the biases that you've had, and get feedback from people that you trust. If you still have questions or you're still struggling through a particular part of your journey, get that feedback. Don't reconcile it all by yourself, because having that feedback, having that interaction with other people not only helps with your transformation, but it holds you accountable. Don't do it by yourself. Next slide. So without further ado, is there any questions or comments for this particular block of your awesome week? Over.
Dr. Baker, thank you for that presentation. Really great, useful information. As you stated, in protocol, we deal with people left-handed and right-handed. I mean, I even have a list of all my principals and who is left-handed, so that when I do seating, those types of things, and people from other cultures and backgrounds. So this is a way of just something else to look at, or with those who we support and or guide in our work. We have a question here, and I know your time is very limited. How can unconscious bias impact diversity? And I'm going to assume that means diversity. This question is from Eric Mejia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Eric. But I'm assuming how can unconscious bias impact diversity, and maybe that's of a staff or an organization, or just how diversity is built. Over.
Right. So yes, ma'am. So it like I mentioned earlier, it can have unintended consequences. So it can impact talent management decisions on not necessarily who we hire, but what positions they're hired into, right? It can impact the retention of your team. If someone does not feel comfortable, if they do not feel included and they're from a diverse group, they're going to leave. They're going to find another job. It also can impact the brand. So if you're known for a certain population, or you're known for a certain cadre of folks that you have to take care of, and you're a gold star out of that, and the brand comes out tarnished that you don't hire women, or there is disparate treatment of women when they're pregnant, or just any group, a particular group, they're get disparate treatment of them, then it hurts the brand. Abercrombie and Fitch is a perfect example. There is a documentary about them on Netflix, and in that documentary, good example of how unconscious bias hurts diversity. In that documentary, it revealed the employees of color were always hired to work in the stockroom, and the employees from the majority group were always placed on the floor. So when the general public would walk in, they would typically see people from the majority group. But if you go in the stockroom, that's where the people of color were. So that's how unconscious bias can impact diversity.
Really great response. And we just have so many great comments here. We have several of the participants. If you get an opportunity, Dr. Baker, please look at the chat. Really great. Thank you for this useful presentation. Thank you for sharing this information. This information is great. And I love to hear what Tamiko has put. My passion and purpose is to build bridges between cultures. And you have just summarized the playbook. Thank you very much. Dr. Baker, I know this ends your presentation, and everyone continue. If you have additional questions, we'll be sure to get those to Dr. Baker. We will have the slides available and be able to send some of this information out. You'll kind of have that chart to kind of think about ways that you could address and look at this. But we are going on to our next speaker. Dr. Baker, thank you again very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Next up, this almost closing out our first session of the second day of the Protocol World Matters Conference. I'd like to introduce to you Desiree Bouchard. She is the Chief of Protocol of the United States Air Force Warfare Center in Nellis Air Force Base, located in what I call the city that never sleeps. I'm sure many of us do, Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Desiree has been in the hospitality industry for nearly 30 years, 20 of those in the United States Air Force as an officer, and the majority of those 20 years she has served in the protocol office in many commands and environments. Desiree and I have worked together once or twice, just with overlapping events. She is a certified etiquette consultant through the Etiquette Institute of St. Louis, Missouri, the Inside Out School of Etiquette, the Accredited Protocol School of Washington, and a member of Protocol and Diplomacy International. Today, she will share with us the fun of being Chief of Protocol at the United States Air Force Warfare Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. Good morning, Desiree. I know it's early for you on the West Coast of the United States. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
We hear and see you.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much for the introduction. It is fun out here. It is not too early for me. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning so that when all the DC emails come in, I'm able to answer them before I even get into my office. So if y'all would, I believe there's a video queued up for me. If you wouldn't mind hitting that video, I'd like to show you that video first and give you a visual of who we are before I get started on my topic. The only thing that would be better with this conference is if I could see everybody. I really love to feed off of the connection and the people. I hope that video pumps you up because it pumps me up every time I see it. I love what we do out here in Las Vegas at the Warfare Center. I'm gonna pop over and share my screen real quick so I can pull up some slides here. Let me know if you all can see.
We got them.
Okay. All right, so what I want to say first before I even forget is to thank you for all the organizers for asking me to be here and for putting this together. We all know the work that goes into this. I love listening to everybody this morning because you know that you're in the right place. You feel like we've met already. I hear everybody speaking. And I feel like if we could all just be in the same room, you probably couldn't break us away for about 2-3 days. So it's amazing out here. It's great to be a part of what the message was for this conference, to bring about positive change in our world and to spotlight this profession that we love. We absolutely have to love it for us to do this. It takes a little bit more. It's a faster pace than most positions across the globe. And connection is what fuels us, right? And we help enable those connections. So what I want to talk to you today about is who we are at the Warfare Center. I know that I didn't know a whole lot. I know this sounds really terrible, and I'll explain some of that in a second here, but who we are, what we do, how I got here, what things are different in protocol for this environment, and those tips and tricks that I've learned across the way that will hopefully help you all in what you do. So that first slide here shows the beauty, right? So what you saw in that video is what we call red flag. It's an exercise. It's an international exercise Top Gun is coming out. So for those of you that might know Top Gun, we are not Top Gun. Top Gun is the Navy, but we're the Air Force. And at the Warfare Center, we are the combat aviation training environment. So people come out here 3 different times a year. We have US only, we have coalition, and then we also have international. We have the Thunderbirds, and yes, they are as beautiful and as incredible as you think they are if you've had the chance to see them. The best part is that I get miniature free air shows every now and then whenever they're practicing out here or departing or returning from location. We have about 10,000 people at the installation. So we are small in terms of some of the other installations, but I tell you what, we are mighty. We're absolutely mighty out here. We live in the middle of the desert. We are in the Mojave Desert, but we are surrounded by beauty out here. We have California, Arizona, Nevada, the Grand Canyon. And of course, as Miss LaDonna was saying, we are in the city that never sleeps, the entertainment capital of the world, and literally 8 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. If you noticed in that video, you could see some of the aircraft taking off with the skyline of Las Vegas. I literally will come out of my office in the mornings and I can see the skyline. I can see the stratosphere and I can see the wheel. So, and I have the pictures up here because I wanted to make sure folks, just in case you haven't been to Las Vegas or just in case you're planning on a visit, that's where we are there on the west, close to California. So how I got here, let me tell you, full disclosure. See if I can change my slide here. I got here 2.5 years ago, and I have to absolutely confess, I've grown up in the military. My dad was in for 30 years. I've served for 20. Some of that is part-time service and full-time civilian service that if I had more time, I'll explain about. But I didn't know about Nellis Air Force Base. So in the past 15 years, I spent at Scott Air Force Base in the Midwest of the United States, and I worked for a 4-star commander. So the last position I held was the Chief of Protocol at Air Mobility Command, where I traveled a lot. We hosted large-scale conferences, we trained, we taught, we hosted international dignitaries. And I thought that I was at the busiest level, obviously not as Miss LaDonna was at the Air Force level. There's a few levels above that, but I thought that I'd kind of hit the pinnacle of busyness. My husband and I wanted to move to the West Coast to be near family, and Nellis was perfect. We loved the Las Vegas area. There's an Air Force base, great. Started applying, got the position, got there, boom, I'm busier than I have ever been. I dropped from a 4-star level command to a 2-star level command. But when you put Las Vegas and Nellis Air Force Base to the drive and the lure of the lights and the fun of Las Vegas, along with what we do here at Nellis Air Force Base with the warfighter training, it is a constant revolving door. So some of these pictures up here show you a variety of the things that we host out here. As the Chief of Protocol, I literally support 3 commanders. So before I had 1 4-star and I kind of supported some others that fell underneath. Here I have 3 different separate entities, which can get a little tricky because in each of those commands, there's events that happen, visits, ceremonies, and events that happen in each of those commands. So in the past year, we've hosted dignitaries from Israel, from Saudi Arabia, from Finland, from Sweden. We had Germany. In a few weeks, I have a NATO French 4-star coming in, possible Qatari. Germany will probably come back. So international visits are constant out here. That bottom left picture was a recent visit we did with 3-star Saudi, who's also a prince. That was very unique and very interesting for us out here. Presidential, in all my years of protocol, I have not seen presidential in 2.5 years. And even with COVID, I've seen 4 so far. So they like to land here. Las Vegas, obviously a hotbed for many reasons. And it is amazing to work with Secret Service and all the security forces and agents and all the many people that come in for those very high level, short notice, as you all know, visits. We'll have the governor of Nevada out here. On the bottom right, we recently hosted the Tuskegee. We had Tuskegee Gunnery award ceremony for a gentleman who hadn't been for the Tuskegee Airmen Group, who hadn't recognized for a gunnery competition, and that was actually on local or national news. And so we got to be a part of that and put together that ceremony out here. In addition to the visits that we do, We host ceremonies. It's ceremonies are us out here. In these pictures, you'll see a prisoner of war missing in action. So we'll do that annually with one of our POWs that are here pictured with his back to us. Change of command ceremonies. A lot of the events we host in hangars, which bring on its own challenges out here, are change of commands ceremonies. And then the bottom right was our 9/11 memorial ceremony for the anniversary. But how is protocol different out here? You know, we're all busy. And like I said, the bright lights of Vegas seem to draw folks in. It's amazing how many DVs just show up and they say, oh, hey, I just happen to be downtown in Las Vegas. I'd like to pop in for a visit. And I thought, I bet you did. Being at the Warfare Center, we are a fighter community. So with all those fighter aircraft, it is a different type of community. I am surrounded by people in flight suits, people who would love to be flying before doing any kind of paperwork on the ground, which I tell you makes for very interesting coordination with VIP visits. The noise of the fighter aircraft is something that I had forgotten about. When I started in the military back in the early 2000s, I started at a fighter base and I was used to that. And then I moved into a mobility base. So there was heavier aircraft, not as much aircraft flying around in our location. We have to do what we call quiet hours out here for ceremonies that we are going to host outside. And if y'all can imagine how I remembered that we have to do quiet hours, you know, right when we're doing one of the POW MIA ceremonies, I hear engines starting in the back because the base, for as much as we do out here, the base is pretty small. And that gut wrenching moment where you realize that you need to start doing quiet hours out here. I deal with a lot of transient folks. So I'm mostly military out here, which means most of my staff and the people that work to help put on all of these events out here, they rotate in a couple of years. So I have been building over the last 2.5 years that I've been here, a lot of continuity and checklists so that things like quiet hours are not forgotten. But it's unique. So it's not just busy, but it's also highly transient, which puts me as a civilian in this position, a place of I'm constantly training. So I've been hosting a lot more trainings out here to help make my job easier and to help make their lives easier as they plan all these things. The security here is much higher. Because of the missions, we are a testing, training, and tactics base. So we test and we train the warfighter. We literally have huge desert land out here for the aircraft to go out and practice their warfighting. Because of what we do out here in the practice and the testing and the training that we do, it is a highly secured area. There are places across the installation I can't even get into, which makes it hard for protocol work. Some of the seating and organization I have to do on the outside with the hand-drawn seating chart, give that to the people who do have access to that room, and then give them all the drink preferences, the setup. I have to lay out things exactly how I want it, give that to that individual and hope that it looks right and it is right. And for all of us protocol people, we know it kind of makes us a little anxious when we can't go in and triple check something to make sure it's right. For example, just this past Friday out here, we hosted the Secretary of the Air Force, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, 2 US senators and quite a few support staff on there. And we had one of those moments where I had to trust what was going in on one of the classified locations. It's much more casual here. You'll see, this is kind of my style in general. I keep this style, but like I said, I'm surrounded by flight suits. It's hot, it's dusty. A lot of people are in casual attire, but I really fight to maintain a corporate feel for my position. Because of what we do, it's so crucial. We have to work with the local community, high-level dignitaries, on-base commanders, and then all the people, from the most junior airmen and members of our community all the way up to the highest. And in a moment's notice, I have to switch gears and communicate and work with everybody, all in between all of those things to make an event happen. So I maintain a little bit more of a professional presentation because I think they need it. I know they need it. And then I'm ready at a moment's notice to go take care of events when they do drop in on us at the last minute. The wind out here is unbelievable. I had to learn that the hard way. You wear a nice dress and then you have to go to the flight line maybe to go greet some of our people coming in. And So hold on to that skirt and don't wear skirts out here. We're all busy, right? We're all unique. And I hope this kind of gives you a good idea of what we do out here. But let me talk to you about what I've learned over the years and how I think it can help you as new or even seasoned protocol officers. As I listened to everybody this morning, I learned something from everybody. One of the biggest things that I do that I've done throughout my career is I've style shifted. I was over at the Protocol School of Washington just a few weeks ago, and we talked about style shifting. I didn't know that it had a name for what I did, and I talked to you about how I kind of switch from my corporate style and go back to the warfighter or to the pilot, where they're very casual, and then I have to go meet 4 stars. But I have to style shift for each of those people. So if I am too formal and too corporate with my fighter pilots, I bet I will lose their interest. They are fast, they are smart, they don't mess around. Like I said, they'd rather be flying. So I really have to style shift from them, pop into my 2 stars office and speak to him, and then switch gears to young airmen who are maybe volunteering for us and be able to communicate properly and quickly. Like I said, it's fast out here, and the fighter community doesn't mess around. The VIPs drop in the last minute, and my, like I said, the presidential arrivals that come in that I hadn't had to deal with ever in my career. It's fast and it's quick. So I always tell my team it's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. So a lot of people like to sit and wait for their emails to pile up and kind of organize and go through. And what I tell my team is that is not what's going to work for us here. My folks will fuss at me because in the morning I will clear through emails in the morning so that I can clear all the things that I don't need. And as soon as I walk into the office on Monday morning, that I'm ready to go with the answers, because it moves so fast and I might have up to 10 visits in 1 week. It's always easier to keep up than it is to catch up. Another thing I talk about is responding versus reacting. You know, how we react is a reflection on us. People come to us with some pretty crazy ideas, right, at the last minute, and they want us to work miracles with no notice. I react with kindness and professionalism and respect, even if in the back of my mind, I might be rolling my eyes. You can't do that though, because they don't understand where you're coming from. You don't understand where they're coming from. So I always tell my folks to respond. Let's not react. Let's just respond. What can we do? What is it that we're looking for? Another thing that I've taught my people out here is how to tell people no. We're in positions where we frequently have to tell folks no, and sometimes as their senior people, you don't want to say no, we can't do that. What we want to do is tell people what we can do for them, what office can help them. And that's a big turning piece, because we're not pushing into any kind of conflict and back and forth. We are saying what we can do, where they can go, and it helps get them the answer that they need. A lot of times they're coming for us just for the answers, right? They don't know exactly what we do. Sometimes they mix us with different offices within the command. Public affairs is one of them. We are not public affairs. We are not media. But I will often switch gears and say, let me tell you what we can do. And the biggest thing to me is to have fun. I remember a moment one time when I was at a conference at my old position, and there was a name tag or seating that was incorrect. And I couldn't believe it was incorrect, because we had gone over this 10 different times and the wrong person saw it, and it was embarrassing. And I'm walking down towards the seat to go fix it. And you realize that your hands are clenched, right? And then you have that moment when you realize you were just way too stressed over a seat tag. Let's take it down a notch. What we do is important, but what we do is not life or death. And so I tell my folks to take that with a grain of salt, ease up a little bit, be kind to yourself, be kind to the people that we're working with. Let's work our best to get the job done. When we make mistakes, it is okay. How we respond to that and how we fix that is really the key to our success. Every single one of us in this protocol forum, whether we're new or old, and I think we should have a whole forum just on protocol mistakes. We will make them. We will continue to make them. They will happen. So how we respond and react to that, and to have fun with what we're doing, because a lot of times those mistakes are the stories that we talk about later and we have a good giggle. Now, it might take a little while for us to get a giggle because we're a little nauseated at the mistake that went down, right? But it's okay. So this brings me just to my last slide of this beautiful skyline, which is a skyline I get to see every single day when I'm at work. And one of our aircraft that are out there, I mean, we look down the flight line and there's 192 aircraft on our flight line at times, and they're flying constantly. So I hope you understand a little bit about who we are at the Warfare Center at Nellis Air Force Base. You know, I came here on purpose to Nevada, but completely and accidentally walked into one of the busiest places for protocol in the United States Air Force, but it is one of the best jobs I've ever had. I thank you all for your time today, and I think that we're going to open it up. I don't know if there's any questions at this point, but thank you so much again to all the planners and everybody put this together, and for those of you that are attending out here today.
Desiree, thank you very much for that outstanding presentation. I can feel just being back there at Nellis. I've obviously never worked there, but I've attended, as you know, and been there for a couple of conferences, and kind of seen the strip on my own once or twice. You know, kind of dropping in and saying, "Oh, hey, do you think I can get a visit?" It's just a great place to be, and yes, and I can attest, it is busier than one could imagine. So we do have a couple of questions here.
Fantastic.
I know everybody, we're at time, but please, I hope you guys can just hang out a little bit longer. The first question is from Eric. How do you balance protocol as a chief of protocol for the United States Air Force and family and work in a city that never sleeps?
I have a very patient husband. You have to really take care of yourself physically and mentally. And I don't, if most of you didn't realize, I actually have two jobs. So I'm, you know, the chief of protocol here, but then I'm also the director of personnel for the Nevada National Guard. And so I add another layer of responsibility in there. I don't have children. That does make it easier. And I have a family that understands the pace of what I do, but you also really have to carve out time for yourself, and you have to fight for that time, and you have to trust your team, and you have to protect your time as well as protect your team's time during those moments, because life is life. Events never stop, but you have to reset yourself, because if you're not recharged with your family, with your own personal desires, goals, and the things that you're doing, you will not be of worth to anybody. I've had to learn that the hard way later in life. But yeah, it's a hard balance, but it is doable, but you do have to fight for that. And routine is probably my best friend.
Yes, and we most certainly do. And I'm sure many of us here can attest to that. I have another, Nikki Krikor is here. Hello, Nikki. This is great. So I have a great question here. Desiree, what are the security challenges you face when utilizing electronic communications on base? For example, do you use specific e-invites, registration software that is compliant with the Department of Defense security? And she says, great to see you, by the way.
So can you read the very beginning of that question again?
Yes. What are the security challenges you face when utilizing electronic communications on base? So like e-invites or whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't put anything security driven in my e-invites, anything like that. Obviously, if my e-invites are social in nature, those are fine, no issue. If I have, for example, last week's DV visit was a prime example. I have a bunch of people coming from 4 different locations to be here to attend some very high level meetings. I don't touch the security. Any of the security questions that come in, I put the primary people directly in connection with our security folks. I don't get involved and I don't get mixed in. There are, within one meeting, there could be 6 layers of security. And I hope I'm answering this question. So I leave it out of Excel spreadsheets. I don't do anything with security. I also have to be careful that anything goes in secure email unsecure, then that can wipe out our systems. So I take that security with hands off. I let security work through security and I don't touch it. Now I ask the question and say, has anybody asked this question? Do we know the level of which we're dealing with? Does this room match the security requirements that we need? But after that, I stay out of it. I've got one POC in my office who is read in, quote unquote, is what they call it, at the right level. He works the security and I don't touch it. And then I triple check when I get there to make sure the people that are coming actually have the clearance to get into that location. So I hope that answers that question.
What about your systems? Do you have to use anything special, or when you send some information out, hey, DV1 is coming or whatever? Do you use code words? Do you have to use special software of any kind? Or
I don't use any software.
Okay.
We do have, for those of aren't familiar with the military side, we do have SIPRNet, which is our secured email. If my visiting office requires that I work on that secure platform, then I do it. If my other visitors require coded words, then I put coded words on there. I defer to the office of the highest ranking that's visiting to determine how they want us to communicate. If we need to limit email communication, if we need to limit actual names. So the higher up they are, the more often we'll do that. And I will put codes like DV2-A for maybe air, DV2-S, and I'm just making something up right now for senators. So I make it to where, and then I let commanders know what I'm saying in those emails so that everybody knows what I'm talking about when I push those cryptic emails out.
Great, that's good. And everyone, we are at time. Desiree, please read some of the comments in the chat. Everyone is just really commenting on the presentation. They found the information extremely useful. Here someone said, I can listen to you all day kind of talk about this. Your new chief of protocol, Jennifer Beckett, it says, hey, I can't wait to come out there and visit with you. This was just really a great way to wrap up everything that we have covered for today's session for the World Protocol Conference. I'm just blown away. Thank you so much. And I love this photo here.
Thanks y'all so much. This is fantastic. Let's do it again. And I'm looking forward to jumping in with the rest of everything. And I wish everybody a great evening and a happy Thursday and a great weekend.
Oh, I hear where we're hosting it, guys. Vegas.
See how that happens? That's my life. That's it. That's it right there.
We can hold the next conference there. I absolutely love it. Well, everyone, I think that brings us to a close for the second day of our World Protocol. I love to keep saying World Protocol Matters, Nikki. I'm just going to keep branding it everywhere I go to talk about that, to keep saying it. Nikki and Patricia, before I wrap up, is there any last thing that you wanted to say?
No, I just enjoyed this morning, this afternoon. I can't stop smiling. I'm just so overwhelmed and happy here. And I'm so grateful that Desiree accepted our invitation. And finally, I can see you and hear you, not just you in the World Protocol magazine, because that was a fascinating article that you shared with us in World Protocol magazine. And it's just, I don't know, I'm just over the moon at the moment. You can see I'm all blushing happy to have you. And yeah, that's all for me. I could listen to you for hours. That was me.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
thank you.
From me, thank you, Desiree. That was really brilliant, what you've shared. And like you said, we have to do more in terms of actually really reaching out to as many professionals out there.
We do.
From the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy is priority for us in terms of how we really build capacity to empower as many protocol officers out there as possible. So this team together, we're really pushing hard. And we have a target to see that we have our numbers doubled in terms of really building that capacity, especially for women, bringing young people into the industry, as well as bringing more women into the industry. So it's very on top for us. So I want to say thank you today for sharing this whole idea. And we want to say, just don't worry, second session will be bigger, better, and robust. So get ready for the second session, don't go away, just log back in, and that will be it for me. Thank you.
And just another quick thing, LaDonna, you remember we were talking about organizing our next conference in person.
Yes.
I would love the idea of having it in Las Vegas.
Okay, that's 2 votes, Desiree.
So we have the perfect
Let me take a note,
ladies.
We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. And really, yeah, why not? Yeah, why not?
And you know what? It's perfect because the city never sleeps, so we don't have to worry about time zones issues.
There you go.
We really don't. We really don't.
So why not? Yeah, and you know, it brings us to I was talking to Nikki just now and Laduna when Dr. Davis spoke about Egypt and how that could work, and we're actually thinking about the Afri Protocol Conference, and we have to put that on hold just to have the World Protocol March Conference. So we're going back to the table to see how we bring alive the Afri Protocol Conference, which is going to be focused in Africa, really dealing with all of the protocol issues there. You talked about mistakes in protocol. I just think it's a big area that we have to look at. So Afri Protocol coming on, and we hope that you will be part of this. Thank you.
This roadshow. All right, everyone, you hear us just chatting here. Let's give a quick wrap up. We heard obviously from awesome presenters today. We learned about digital protocol, right? That's one of the topics and words of the day, and phrases that I've used, as we heard about the significant role of protocol and diplomacy. I mean, we just really, who is not moved by this Invictus spirit? I think it's kind of contagious and is here with all of us right now. And then it was just followed by this wonderful briefing topic, just from an interpreter's point of view, just learning the differences of working and doing things with, we're looking at Egypt and maybe comparative for Hungary, but I'm sure you all can compare that to the work that you do and you have done. My note there, concept of time. We all know and deal with this all the time. And then to our last two briefers, Dr. Baker giving us this presentation and talking about unconscious bias and just how it can impact us in diplomacy with our own ways of dealing with each other and our guests and principals, and just how we act, being considerate and thinking about, she started off with the left and the right-handed. So many years ago, I always notice people who are left-handed, and I have to make my seating charts. And when we do things, I just have always kept a note of every principal or person that we have all the time who is left or right-handed or what have you, so I can make those adjustments. And then finally, this presentation where we're all ready to go to Las Vegas to just
we are doing as well.
Really hear the style shifting, right? And I love that. It is such an important term and an important practice to remember. Style shifting. You notice it when you go from one secretary or one principal or one ambassador who you're supporting. They may have a preference of dealing with things a different way, or from, day to night. You may have to deal with children or younger group, and then you deal with more senior. You will just have to adjust your style to ensure that your message is getting communicated. So thank you all. The next session, it will be with us here at 6 p.m. Is that what you're tracking? I'm almost going to say 1 p.m. because that is the time that I have for us. So at 5:30, 17:30, everyone should be able to log on, or you can just stay logged on. Go grab something really quick and come back and join us.
That's just easy enough, and then we shall meet here again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for joining in this morning session or afternoon session, where you are, morning, afternoon, evening. We say thank you, and we'll see you again in the next session.
Thank you.
Yes.